I found a micro SD card in my boyfriend's laundry on a Sunday. By noon, I had lost faith in everything I thought was true. It was a humid Atlanta morning. The air conditioner was struggling against the Georgia heat. I was standing in the laundry room, sorting darks from lights. I pulled Theron's jeans from the basket. They were heavy denim, stiff from the dryer. Something hard hit the metal door with a sharp clink. I reached down to pick it up. It was small and black, a micro SD card. It was taped to a piece of cut plastic. Theron is a legal consultant. He always has storage drives for case files and video depositions. I didn't think anything of it. I assumed it was just work stuff. I walked down the hall to the home office. The carpet was soft under my socks. The house was quiet, too quiet. I sat at my desk. My MacBook Pro was sleeping in the center of the blotter. I tapped the spacebar to wake the screen up. The blue light hit my face. I slid the card into the USB adapter on the side. A folder window popped up immediately. It was titled Project Sable. I froze. My finger hovered over the mouse. The cursor blinked at me like a heartbeat. Have you ever had a moment where your stomach just drops, where the world tilts on its axis and you can't find your footing? I hesitated for a full minute. But I'm a senior probation officer at the Fulton County Courthouse. Curiosity is literally in my job description. Theron always told me I was paranoid. He said I overanalyzed everything. I double-clicked the folder. The screen refreshed to show a grid of subfolders. There were hundreds of them. The names were precise. Legal. Cold. Calculated. Incidents. Verbal. Sable. Scowl. Meltdown. Scout. Threats. Scowl. Meltdown. Scowl. Public. Evidence. Scowl. Made. Scout. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. The room suddenly felt very small. Claustrophobic. My eyes scanned the screen until they stopped on one specific folder. It was named Exhibit A. Right next to it was another folder, Invoice Paid. I didn't understand. Who gets invoiced in a relationship? That doesn't hold water. My hands were shaking so hard I missed the click button. I took a deep breath. I steadied my wrist. I clicked on Exhibit A. Inside were audio files, MP3s. They were sorted by date, spanning 3 years. The first one was from October of 2021, Sable Wave. I picked up my headphones. I put them on. The noise canceling blocked out the sound of the lawnmowers outside. I pressed play. The black timeline moved across the screen. I heard a voice. It was screaming. It was distorted. It was ugly. You are a disgrace. You are a liar. I hate you. I stopped the track instantly. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I knew that voice. It was me. I looked at the calendar on the wall. I tried to place the date. October 12th, 2021. That was a Tuesday. We'd gone to a fancy dinner that night. I remember wearing a blue dress. I remember drinking wine. I remember laughing at Theron's jokes. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember being that angry. I don't remember saying those things. The timestamp on the file was 2014 a.m. I was asleep at 2014 a.m. Or I thought I was. I clicked the next file, Sable 02. It was more screaming, more cursing. Violent, hateful words pouring out of my mouth. I felt dizzy. I leaned back in my leather chair. The leather creaked. This wasn't real. But the waveform on the screen didn't lie. The record would show he was building a case against me. I looked at that invoice for paid folder again. I wanted to click it, but I was scared. I didn't remember saying those words. I didn't remember that fight, but the voice was undeniably mine, and it sounded like a monster. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I was terrified of what I was about to see. I clicked the folder named Invoice Paid. A PDF document opened up on the screen. The header read, Villanueva Legal Consulting. The font was stark. Times New Roman. It looked official. It looked dangerous. I scanned the document. Date of service, October 15, 2021. That was 2 weeks after our first date. The line item read, Subject Characterization and Audio Procurement. The total amount was $15,000. Paid in full. I scrolled to the bottom to see the client. My breath hitched in my throat. The payer was listed as Emma Webb. Marcus. My ex-husband. You know that feeling when your stomach just drops out of your body? That was me. I stared at the name. The letters seemed to swim on the screen. The air in the laundry room suddenly felt very thick. I couldn't breathe. Why would Marcus pay Theron? I closed my eyes tight. I needed to understand how this started. I flashed back to 3 years ago. I was at Cafe Circa in downtown Atlanta. It was a Tuesday night. I was sitting at the bar. I was celebrating a big courtroom victory. I had a glass of Pinot Noir in front of me. Theron slid onto the stool next to me. He smelled like sandalwood and expensive cigarettes. He didn't look at me at first. He just ordered a Macallan 18. Then he turned. "You look like a woman who carries a lot of weight on your shoulders," he said. I laughed. I told him I was a senior probation officer. His eyes lit up. It was almost predatory. "Forensic audio," he said when I asked his job. "I help men who are being crushed by the system." He told me about his clients. Husbands destroyed by lies, fathers kept from their kids. I ate it up. I thought I was the only one who understood his pain. We started seeing each other immediately. He was charming, but he was always interviewing me, not like a boyfriend. Like a lawyer, we would be in bed. The lights would be low. He would trace circles on my back. "What's the hardest part of your job, Sable?" he would whisper. I would talk about the domestic violence cases. "How do you know when they're lying?" he asked. I told him everything. I told him I looked for patterns. I told him I looked for emotional volatility. I remember explaining the legal definition of harassment. I thought he was just curious. He took notes sometimes on his phone. I never saw what he wrote. If you've ever looked back at a memory and realized it was a lie, you know what this feels like. I opened my eyes. I was back in the present. The laundry room was silent. I reached into the pocket of his jeans again. My fingers hit something stiff and glossy. I pulled it out. It was a Polaroid photo. We were at a fundraiser last spring. The lighting was dim. I was wearing that navy blue dress, the one I bought at Phipps Plaza. I looked happy in the picture. Drunk, but happy. Theron was behind me. He had his phone up, taking a selfie. But look at his hand. He wasn't holding the phone normally. He had a black boom mic attached to the bottom. It was pointed directly at my face. I zoomed in with my own eyes. I was laughing in the picture, mouth wide open. He was capturing the audio. Analyzing it, I dropped the photo. It landed face down on the desk. I felt sick. My stomach turned over. I realized what this was. It wasn't a relationship. It was a consulting gig. He wasn't falling in love with me. He was building a profile. He asked me what abuse sounded like. He asked me what evidence held up in court. And I told him. I gave him the blueprint to destroy me. Objection. Overruled by silence. He didn't want a girlfriend. He wanted a subject matter expert. He wanted to know exactly what abuse sounded like to a probation officer. You know that feeling when you realize you're the villain in someone else's movie? That was me. Sitting at my desk, staring at a waveform on a screen. I put the headphones on. My hand was shaking so bad I almost dropped them. I clicked the file named Sable Rage 001. The timestamp said October 2021. That was 2 years ago. I remember that day. It was a Tuesday. We were in the living room of our old apartment in Midtown. I remember being annoyed. But I didn't remember being this person. The audio started. Theron's voice was calm. Too calm. "It's just a little chilly, Sable," he said. "Can we turn it up to 72? In the recording, I snapped. "No, Theron, it's 70 degrees. Deal with it." I winced. My own voice sounded jagged, like glass breaking. But then I looked at the laptop screen closer. I paused the file. I opened the file properties. The raw audio file was 45 minutes long. The file I was listening to, it was cut down to exactly 2 minutes. I scrubbed to the 20-minute mark. For 10 minutes, Theron just wouldn't stop. "Are you always this controlling?" he asked on the tape. "It's just a thermostat. Why do you have to be so difficult?" He kept going and going. He used the word hysterical 3 times in 1 minute. Then finally, at the 30-minute mark, I heard my voice explode. "Because I am sick of this," I screamed on the recording. "Leave it alone." He cut the recording right there. Cut. Print. Exhibit A. He'd cut out the 30 minutes of psychological torture. He left in the 2 seconds of me losing it. And that's the version he kept. That's what he was going to show a judge. And honestly, I want to know what you would have done if someone poked you for 30 minutes straight. I sat back in the chair. The air conditioning in my current office hummed in the background. It was freezing. I felt cold all over. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being produced, directed, Edited. I remembered that argument. I remembered Darren standing by the vent, smirking while I adjusted the dial. I thought he was smiling because he was cute. He was smirking because he was getting what he paid for. I pulled the micro SD card out of the USB adapter. The metal was cold against my fingers. I needed to hide this. If he came home and found me with this, I heard a car door slam outside. My heart stopped. I looked at the window. It was 20 p.m. on a Sunday. Darren wasn't due back for hours. But that sound, it was heavy, deliberate. I looked at the Polaroid on the desk. The boom mic. The smug look on his face. I realized something else. The invoice said, subject characterization. He didn't just record me. He studied me. He knew exactly what buttons to push. And this is where it gets really messed up. He wasn't trying to fix our relationship. He was trying to break it. On purpose. I grabbed the micro SD card. I shoved it deep into my front jeans pocket. The denim was tight against my skin. I closed the laptop. The screen went black. I looked at the empty room. The silence was heavy. I thought about my job at the courthouse. I thought about the judges who trust me. If they heard that 2-minute clip, they wouldn't see the 45 minutes of baiting. They'd just hear a probation officer screaming. Objection. Overruled by silence. He was prodding me. He was poking the bear with a stick. And when the bear finally roared, he made sure the tape was rolling. I slammed the laptop shut. The room went dead silent. I held my breath. I counted to 5. 1, 2, 3. I tiptoed to the window. The mini blends cut a shadow across my face. I peeked through the slats. It was just Mrs. Henderson from next door. She was dropping off a package. The car door wasn't his. It was a false alarm. I let out a breath that felt like I'd been holding it for 3 years. I sat back down in his leather chair. It was still warm. I opened the laptop again. The screen blinked back to life. I needed to see how deep this went. I clicked on the raw audio files, but then I saw something else. A folder labeled Edits. I double-clicked it. Adobe Audition launched. The screen filled with a multi-track timeline. It looked like a digital surgery. You know how audio waves look? Like jagged mountains? These were chopped into tiny pieces, little blocks, fragmented. I hovered the mouse over one block. The timestamp was from October. Another block was from Christmas. Another from last week. He was stitching together sentences. I put the headphones on. My hands were shaking so much the mouse clicked by itself. I pressed play. My voice filled my ears. You are pathetic. That was real. I said that during the fight about the lie detector test. But then the audio jumped. A slight pop, and I'm gonna hurt you. I froze. The blood drained from my face? I never said that. I would never say that. I looked at the timeline closer. The word hurt was spliced in from a different conversation. It was from when I told him my back hurt. He had taken a complaint about pain and turned it into a threat of violence. The record would show a monster. But the truth? The truth was on the cutting room floor. This is what gaslighting looks like in the 21st century. It isn't just in your head anymore. It's in Pro Tools. I scrolled down the list of files. Sable Lunthers -S1 SSAL. Sable Usker 2. Sable Zurich Custody Usk Liability. He was building a case to paint me as unfit, unstable, dangerous to be around. He wasn't just documenting a breakup. He was manufacturing evidence for a legal war, and my ex-husband was paying the bill. I sat there staring at the screen. The cursor blinked at me, like a heartbeat or a countdown. Have you ever felt like your reality is being rewritten by someone else? Like you're a character in a book you didn't write? Tell me in the comments if you've ever doubted your own memory because of someone else's lies. I pulled the micro SD card out of my pocket. It felt hot against my fingers. This was the only version of the truth left. If I went to court with his files, I'd lose my job. I'd lose everything. But with this card, I had the source code. But I was still trapped in this house, waiting for the director to come back to the set. He wasn't just recording me. He was writing a script, and I was the villain without even knowing I was on stage. I couldn't look at that timeline anymore. It was making me sick. I stood up and paced the small office. The floorboards creaked under my heels. I needed physical proof. I needed something I could hold in court. I walked over to his mahogany desk. The top was polished, immaculate, too clean. I pulled open the top left drawer. It was heavy. Inside was a tangle of charging cables. My fingers brushed against something crinkled. Thermal paper. I pulled it out into the light. It was a long white receipt from Best Buy. The date at the top, October 12th, 2021. That was 3 days before our biggest fight ever. The one where he said I lost my mind. I looked down the list of items. 5 Google Nest Hubs. 1 Orbi Tri-Band Mesh Router System. Total cost, $1,248.93. That is a lot of money for energy efficiency. I remember asking him about that bill. He said it was for work. He lied. If you've ever been lied to about money, you know that specific pit in your stomach. I closed my eyes and I could see it. The installation day. It was a Saturday morning. The sun was actually shining. Theron was on a stepladder in the hallway. He was wearing that gray Georgia Tech t-shirt. The one with the hole in the collar. He was drilling into the drywall. Dust was falling on the carpet. I was holding his drill bits. I handed him a screwdriver. I asked, "Do we really need one in the bedroom?" He didn't even look down at me. He just tightened the screw. He said, "It's for the light, Sable." The automation. I remember feeling stupid for asking. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. He climbed down and wiped his forehead. He smiled, that tight, professional smile. He said, "Trust me, it's an upgrade." An upgrade. That word means something different now. In the legal world, we call this establishing a pattern. I opened my eyes. I was standing in the hallway now. The house was so quiet. The air conditioner was humming. I walked into the bedroom. It was dim. The blinds were drawn against the Atlanta sun. There it was, sitting on the mahogany nightstand, the Google Nest Hub. It had a white screen. It looked innocent enough, like a picture frame. But I knew better now. I walked over to it slowly. My heart was pounding in my ears. Thump, thump, thump. I stared at the black glass lens. That thing heard everything. It heard me crying after work. It heard me on the phone with Detective Kimura. It heard me whispering that I was scared. And the router, that mesh system he put in the basement, he manages it all from his phone. I never had the password. He always said, "You don't want to deal with the tech stuff." He controls the network. He is the digital heir in this house. I bet the logs show uploads at 3 a.m. every single night. While I was asleep next to him, he was sending my voice to the cloud. He was cutting and pasting my screams. I felt dirty. I felt like I needed a shower. But I couldn't move. I was just staring at that plastic screen. If you've ever been in a house that feels too quiet, you know what I mean. It wasn't peace. It was recording. You know what makes me the maddest? I talked to it. I said good morning to it. I asked it for the weather. That little blue light would pulse. Like it was listening. Like it was alive. And Theron was on the other end of that signal. He was collecting data. I was just a subject in his lab. I looked around the room. The closet door was open. The bathroom door was slightly ajar. How many cameras are there? Are there cameras? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. But I do know this. There's one in the kitchen, one in the living room, one in the hallway. I slept next to a bug for a year. I poured my heart out to a piece of plastic on the nightstand. I unplugged the Google Nest Hub from the wall socket. The screen went black instantly. Silence rushed back into the bedroom, but it felt heavy. I grabbed the device. I walked out of the room. I went straight to the kitchen. The kitchen was bright. Too bright. Afternoon sun was hitting the stainless steel appliances. It felt blinding. I opened the junk drawer. It was full of old takeout menus and rubber bands. I buried the Nest Hub underneath them. I slammed the drawer shut. Standing there by the sink, a memory hit me. It was 6 months ago. A Tuesday night. I was standing right here, washing wine glasses. I remember the water running over my hands. It was hot. The steam was fogging up the window above the sink. I turned to Theron. I asked him a simple question. I asked, "Why do I feel like you're recording me?" I remember the soap suds on my hands. They felt cold and slimy. Theron didn't get angry. He didn't yell. That was the problem. He walked over slowly. He took my wet hands in his. He turned me around gently. He looked at me with those soft, pitying eyes. He said, "Sable, listen to yourself. You're exhausted. The Fulton County cases are piling up." I felt my stomach drop. I thought I was losing my mind. I looked at the floor. I couldn't look him in the eye. He used my job against me. The very thing that defines me. He used it to make me question my sanity, and then I did it. I apologized. I actually apologized for being right. Have you ever been in a situation where your gut screams one thing, but the person you love tells you you're crazy? Tell me in the comments if you felt that specific kind of sickening doubt. I pulled my phone out of my jeans pocket. I needed to see it. I needed to see the evidence of my own conditioning. I unlocked the screen. The brightness hurt my eyes. I scrolled back to October. There was the text thread. The bubble was blue. It was sent at 9:14 p.m. I read the words out loud to the empty room. I'm sorry for being paranoid tonight. I know you love me. I'm just stressed. Then I looked at his reply. It was instant. It's okay, Sable. I know work stresses you out. We can get help. The record will show I was gaslit. Perfectly. Methodically. He wasn't comforting me. He was training me. He was teaching me that my instincts were wrong. He was programming me to doubt my own reality. I leaned back against the counter. The granite dug into my spine. I looked at the ceiling fan spinning above me. How many times did he do this? How many times did I apologize for catching him? I realized then that this wasn't just about custody or money. This is about total control. He wanted to break me before I even knew we were fighting. He played me like a witness on the stand. He led the witness. He directed the narrative. I was the unreliable narrator in his movie. My tears dried up. The shaking stopped. Something else took over. A cold, hard fury settled in my chest. He weaponized my empathy. He used my own mental health against me before he even broke it. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the black screen of that Google Nest hub. It was just sitting there on the granite counter, innocent plastic. But it felt like a loaded gun. My mind started racing backward. 3 months ago, October 12th. It was a Tuesday. I was in my office at the Fulton County Courthouse. It was freezing in room 402. The HVAC unit was always rattling above my desk. I had a defendant in front of me. A big guy. He smelled like stale tobacco and anger. He was screaming about a technicality. He was leaning over my desk. I remember the sweat on his upper lip. I wanted to scream right back in his face. I wanted to throw my heavy case file at the wall. But I didn't. I'm a professional. I dug my nails into my palms. I took a breath. I told him his behavior was contempt of court. I dismissed him. But I left that room shaking. I went to the break room and splashed water on my face. I thought I was just stressed. I thought I was tired. But then I picked up my phone from the counter. I unlocked the screen. I scrolled back to that morning. October 12th, 7:04 a.m. There was an email from Theron. The subject line was harmless enough. It said, "Just thinking about you." I opened it. The message was short, just one sentence. "You really need to work on that temper. It's going to cost you your job one day." I stared at the text. 7:04 a.m. That was 15 minutes after I walked out the door. That was 10 minutes after our fight in the kitchen. I remember it now so clearly. He was blocking the doorway. He was holding his coffee mug. He kept saying, "You're so unstable, you're hysterical this morning." He kept poking me, verbally poking me, until I finally snapped. I said, "Get out of my way, Theron." I raised my voice. I grabbed my keys off the hook, and I left. He sent that email 5 minutes later, to document it, to timestamp my rage. You see what he did? Have you ever had someone poke you until you snapped, then blamed you for bleeding? Tell me in the comments if you've experienced that, because it's a specific kind of torture. He checked my court docket. He knew I had a volatile hearing that day. He started the fight to ensure I was already at a boiling point. He was priming the pump. If I had lost my cool with that defendant, if I had yelled, there would have been an official complaint, an internal investigation. My record would have been flagged. And then he would have had evidence. He would have played the recording of our kitchen fight. He would have shown the court the email. He would have proved I was unstable. It was a honeypot, a professional trap. He wasn't just trying to hurt my feelings. He was trying to dismantle my career. Piece by piece, I looked around the silent kitchen. The walls felt like they were closing in. My heart started hammering against my ribs. This wasn't a relationship. It was a long game takedown. If I had snapped that day, I would have lost my badge. And that was the point all along. I couldn't stay in that kitchen. The silence was screaming at me. I felt like the walls were breathing. I grabbed the laptop. I ran to the home office. I slammed the door. I locked the deadbolt. Click! I sat down at his desk. The leather chair was still warm. That made my skin crawl. I put the computer on the mahogany surface. The wood was cold. I opened the lid again. I went back to the main directory. I needed to know who was paying him. I needed to see the money trail. You ever wonder how much it cost to destroy a woman? I was about to find out. I clicked on a folder labeled Cloud Onto Your Backup link. It opened a browser window. It was a Dropbox account. The background was generic gray, but the file names, they were anything but generic. I saw folders, dozens of them. Subject Amanda Erskine L. Subject Erskine Jennifer K. Subject Erskine Jexter T. They all followed the same pattern. Just like Project Sable, I felt my blood run cold. This was a conveyor belt of misery. I opened a file called Client Ledger 2024.xlsx. It was a spreadsheet. Perfect rows. Perfect columns. Calibri font, size 11. It looked so corporate, so clean. I scanned the headers. Date. Client name. Service rendered. Amount paid. Status. Status. Like a shipping order. I looked down the list of services. My stomach turned. Gaslighting protocol. Audio splicing. False evidence planting. Social media harassment campaign. These were menu items. Then I saw a row that made me stop. October 12th. The date of our fight. The amount was $50,000. $50,000. The service listed was domestic violence package. 50 grand. That's more than I make in a year. Someone paid that much to fake abuse? To steal kids? To ruin a career? I stared at the numbers. They blurred together through my tears. I saw another row. $25,000. Service, character assassination, and custody prep. Another one. $15,000. Service, employment sabotage. This was a menu of destruction. I realized then, this wasn't just about men winning arguments. This was about systematic control. Theron was selling legal outcomes. He was selling power. I thought about my job. I sit in Fulton County Courthouse every day. I help people. I try to keep families together. And Theron? He was tearing them apart for profit. He was using the law I respect to hurt people. Tell me in the comments, how do you even process that? The system is rigged. The people holding the gavel are customers. I kept scrolling. I needed to see the names. I needed to know who was buying this torture. Most of them were anonymous. Client 924. Client 940 Plea. But then I saw a full name. Judge Mercer. I froze. The same Judge Mercer who presided over my custody hearing with Marcus. The same judge who denied my emergency motion last month. He was listed as a consultation exchange. He wasn't a client. He was a partner. I remembered his face in court, that smug little smile. He told me I seemed unstable. He said my outbursts were concerning. He was reading from Theron's script. Marcus must have connected them. Marcus has money. Mercer has the authority. Theron has the tools. It was a perfect triangle of corruption. I looked back at the other files. I clicked on Subject Erskine Amanda Erskine L. I saw photos of a woman. She looked just like me. Tired. Defeated. There was an audio file named Amanda Rant.channel.wave. He did this to her too. I leaned back in the chair. The room felt very small. The hum of the computer fan sounded like a drill in my skull. I touched the screen. It was warm. I felt dirty, like I needed to scrub my skin with steel wool. I looked at the bottom of the spreadsheet. There was a grand total of earnings. The number was 7 figures. Millions of dollars. Made from women's tears. Made from stolen children. And my folder? Project Sable had a checkbox next to it. Finalizing phase public discredit. That was the next step. He wasn't done with me yet. I looked at the laptop screen. It wasn't a relationship history. It was a portfolio. I wasn't a girlfriend. I wasn't a victim. I was a prototype. I looked at the Project Sable folder one last time. It was just one file in a long line of files. Just another SKU on a digital shelf. This wasn't just a breakup strategy. This was a business model. And I was the R&D department. I couldn't sit in that office anymore. The air was too thick. I grabbed a small screwdriver from the kitchen junk drawer. I walked down the long hallway to the master bathroom. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open with my foot. I stepped onto the edge of the bathtub. The porcelain tile was cold through my socks. I looked up at the smoke detector. It was white, round, completely innocent. Or so I thought. I reached up and gave it a sharp twist. It came loose in my hand. I sat down on the closed toilet lid. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I used the screwdriver to pry open the plastic casing. It snapped apart with a loud click. And there it was. There was no sensor inside for smoke. No ionization chamber, just a small green circuit board. And a SIM card. It was tiny, silver, professional. I took a photo with my phone. The flash lit up the tiny components. A black wire antenna was coiled like a snake. This is high-end equipment, military grade. This wasn't something you buy at a spy shop in the mall. This was pro-level surveillance. I looked closer at the board. There was a small logo etched into the metal. A bird in flight. I didn't recognize it, but I knew what it meant. This was connected to the Orbi router in the office, the one that uploaded files at 3 a.m. It was all part of the same grid, a digital spiderweb. And then the memories hit me. Hard. I remembered sitting on the floor of the shower 3 weeks ago. The water was scalding. I was crying. Ugly crying. I'd had a terrible day in court. A defendant had threatened my family. I sat there on the tiles. I let the water wash over my face. I remembered talking to myself. I can't do this anymore, I whispered. I can't keep going. I thought I was alone. I thought the running water drowned out the sound. I was wrong. The Ron was listening. The man I slept next to was recording my breakdown. For what? To use it against me later? To edit my pain into a suicide risk file? Have you ever felt that? That sensation of being dirty? I couldn't scrub this feeling off with soap. I realized the purpose. I thought back to the ledger on the laptop. Public discredit. If he recorded me crying in the shower, he could play that for a judge. He could tell the court I was mentally unstable, unfit to serve as a probation officer, unfit to have access to sensitive information. It wasn't just about a relationship anymore. It was about my career. He was building a case to have me committed. Or worse. And I walked right into it. I gave him the footage every single day. You know that feeling when the hair stands up on the back of your neck? That happened to me right then. I felt a draft coming from the ceiling vent. I looked up. The vent cover was slightly askew, just by an inch. But I noticed it. I always notice things. It's my job. I didn't climb up to check it. I couldn't handle seeing another bug. Not right now. My nerves were already frayed to the breaking point. I put the smoke detector back. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the screwdriver. I had to take 3 deep breaths just to steady them. Objection! I wanted to scream. Objection to this invasion of privacy. But there was no judge here to hear me. Just the hidden microphone in the ceiling. I walked out of the bathroom and shut the door tight. I leaned against the wood paneling. I felt like the walls were breathing. I looked down at my clothes. My gray Georgia Tech t-shirt. My sweatpants. I suddenly felt exposed. Naked. I realized the bathroom was never a sanctuary. It was a soundstage, and I was the star of the show. I always thought the bathroom was the only place I could truly be alone. I was wrong. I couldn't stand in that hallway forever. That askew vent was staring down at me like a black eye. I walked back into the home office. The air in there was stale. It smelled like old toner and anxiety. The leather chair was still spinning slowly from where he had left it. I sat down. The seat was still warm. That warmth made my skin crawl. I tapped the spacebar. The Mac screen woke up. It wasn't a spreadsheet this time. It was a Word document, maximized to fill the screen. The header was in bold, black font. Superior Court of Fulton County. State of Georgia. Petition for temporary protective. My heart stopped, just flatlined. You know that feeling? When the bottom drops out of your stomach? That is exactly how I felt. I started reading the affidavit. The font was Times New Roman, size 12, the standard for legal lies. Petitioner, Theron Villanueva, states that respondent is violent and unstable. Respondent has access to firearms through her employment. I haven't carried a service weapon in 10 years, but the judge wouldn't know that. The judge would see probation officer and gun. He would see unstable. I scrolled down to the specific incidents. Incident on November 4th, respondent threw a wine bottle. I remember that night, I dropped a bottle of Pinot. It shattered on the granite. I cleaned it up. I cried because it was expensive. Theron wrote, respondent brandished the bottle as a weapon. He wrote, "Petitioner feared for his life." He attached a file, Exhibit B winebreak.wave. That was the audio file he edited. He spliced the sound of glass breaking. He cut out my sobbing. He left the silence where I should have been speaking. Then he spliced in a scream from a different fight. I was looking at a construction of a crime that never happened. Can you imagine reading a police report about yourself? Seeing your name next to words like assault and stalking? It is a specific kind of gaslighting. It makes you question your own memory, but I knew the truth. I had the raw files on the micro SD card in my pocket. I scrolled further down. Incident on October 15th. Respondent threatened to burn the house down. I have never threatened arson in my life, but I did complain about the fireplace draft. He took that audio. This house is freezing. Let's just burn it down. I was making a joke. A bad joke. He turned it into a terrorist threat. He cited OCGA 19-13-1, the Family Violence Act. If a judge signs this, I am a domestic abuser in the eyes of the state. A senior probation officer with a TPO? That is a career-ending event. Immediate suspension. Probable termination. And Marcus? Marcus gets custody. He gets the house. He gets everything he paid for. I looked at the timestamp on the document. Last modified, today, 2014 p.m. He was drafting this while I was in the shower. He was building the cage while I was washing my hair. The silence in the room was heavy. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. It sounded like a countdown timer. I looked at the prayer for relief section. Petitioner requests immediate removal of respondent from the marital residence. Petitioner requests exclusive possession of the premises. He was kicking me out of my own house. Based on audio he fabricated, I thought he was going to break up with me. I thought he would pack a bag and leave. That would be painful, but survivable. This was a tactical nuke. He wasn't just trying to hurt me. He was trying to incarcerate me. If the police came to enforce this order and I got scared, or I tried to explain, that is resisting arrest. That is disorderly conduct. He had mapped out every possible reaction I could have, and he had a charge ready for it. I felt a cold drop of sweat roll down my spine. It hit the waistband of my jeans. I realized then how much danger I was actually in. I need you guys to understand this. This wasn't a messy breakup. This was a legal assassination. I looked at the blinking cursor at the end of the document. It was blinking. On, off, like a heartbeat monitor flatlining. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't cry, I couldn't scream. I had to be the probation officer again. I had to follow the rules of evidence, because the record will show everything, but only if I survive the night. I stared at the screen one last time. The document was titled TPO Draft Final Embouchure of the Free PDF. He wasn't going to break up with me. He was going to arrest me. Have you ever sat at a dinner table and felt like the defendant in your own trial? I didn't know it then. But my dining room was a courtroom. 2 months ago, Theron invited his sister and her husband over for Sunday dinner. The pot roast was in the oven. I could smell the rosemary and thyme mixing with the lemon polish. The table was set with the good china. The candles were lit. His sister Lena, her husband David. They walked in with Tupperware and pity in their eyes. We sat around the mahogany table. I poured the expensive Merlot. Theron smiled that tight smile he always uses when he's lying. Lena didn't ask about my new promotion. She leaned in and asked if I was sleeping enough. I thought she was just being a concerned sister-in-law. David looked at me over his reading glasses. He said, "You seem tightly wound, Sable." I remember gripping my fork. The metal felt cold against my palm. I laughed it off. I said, "Probation work is stressful. You know how it is." They didn't laugh. They just exchanged this look. A look of shared knowledge. The wine tasted sour in my mouth. Or maybe that was just my paranoia. They spent the whole night asking if I was okay, if I needed help. Theron just sat there. He ate his pot roast. He let them poke at my sanity. I want you to ask yourself something. Have you ever realized you were the topic of conversation before you walked in the room? I sat back in the leather chair. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I scrolled through my archived Facebook notifications. I was looking for that night. There it was, an event page, dinner at Theron's. The date was October 15th. 2 months ago, the description read, "Support our friend Theron during this difficult time." The guest list was private, but I could see the RSVPs. Lina, David, Marcus, even his brother from Macon. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands started to shake. It wasn't a dinner party. It was an intervention. As a probation officer, I know how witnesses are prepped. They were primed. They were prepped to be witnesses for the prosecution. I looked at the empty chair across from me. The leather was still indented from his body. The house was so quiet. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sun coming through the blinds. Theron wasn't just recording me. He was systematically poisoning my social circle. Every time I snapped at him in private, he told them I was spiraling. The record will show that I had an angry outburst at that dinner. I did raise my voice that night, because they wouldn't stop interrogating me. I was exhausted from a double shift at the courthouse. I just wanted silence. That didn't matter to them. They had their narrative. I was the unstable girlfriend. You know that feeling when you try to explain the truth, but nobody wants to hear it? He needed character witnesses, people who would testify in a custody hearing. He was using my grief, my stress, my job as ammunition. My throat felt dry. I reached for the water glass on the mahogany desk. The water was warm. It tasted like plastic. He wasn't trying to fix me. He was building a case file. He was building a jury of his friends ready to sentence me without a trial. Do you know the sound a ceramic plate makes when it hits a granite backsplash? It's distinct, sharp, final. That sound has been haunting me for a week. It echoes in my head right now, sitting here in his office. The desk is mahogany. The laptop is open. The micro SD card feels heavy in my hand. I slide the card into the adapter. It clicks. The folder pops up on the screen. Dozens of video files. Dates going back years. I scroll down to last Tuesday. October 15th. You have to understand, I don't throw things. I'm an officer of the court. I follow procedure. I keep my composure. But that night, the air in the kitchen was thick, heavy. Theron was leaning against the island. He was wearing that gray Georgia Tech t-shirt. He looked so calm. Too calm. He was swirling a glass of Merlot. The red liquid looked like blood in the dim light. He said, "You're spiraling, Sable. Just like your mother?" I told him to shut up. I said, "Don't talk about her." He smiled, just a little. He kept pushing. He knew the buttons. He installed them 3 years ago. He said, "Who would hire you now? You're a liability. You're unstable." My vision went red. My hand moved on its own. The plate was just right there. A heavy white stoneware dish from our wedding registry. I grabbed it. I launched it. It shattered. White shards everywhere. I stood there, chest heaving, waiting for him to yell, to call the police, to do something. But he didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He just stood there, perfectly still. I clicked the video file on the screen. The timeline loads. I hit play. The footage is grainy, black and white, high angle. It's taken from the shelf above the fridge. I see myself on screen. I look wild, unhinged, a monster in a kitchen. But look at him. In the corner of the frame, he's holding his phone up. He isn't scared. He isn't angry. He's filming the plate breaking. He's filming my face. If you've ever been pushed to the brink, you know this feeling. The shame of breaking your own rules. The timestamp on the video says 8:14 p.m. I watch myself scream on the screen. The audio is distorted, loud, piercing. Then silence. I'm just standing there, staring at the mess. The camera pans. It's not a motion sensor. Someone is controlling it. It zooms in on the floor, on the jagged pieces of ceramic. Evidence collection. Then it pans up to Theron. He steps over the broken glass. He walks right up to the lens. He checks the focus. He nods. This wasn't an argument. It was a setup. A stage direction executed perfectly. I gave him the soundbite. I gave him the visual. I handed him my career on a silver platter. I feel sick. My stomach turns over. The room is spinning. I pause the video. I zoom in on his face. He isn't looking at the mess. He is looking at the camera lens. He smiled, just a little, a tiny quirk of the lips. This was the climax of his script. The finale he wrote 3 years ago. He's going to use this. Sable threw a deadly weapon. She has violent outbursts. The judge will see this. The jury will see this. They won't see the setup. They won't see the 3 years of baiting. They will see the plate. They will see the monster he created. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been provoked into doing something completely out of character? I sat in that chair. The leather was still warm from him. I felt cold. I realized then that I wasn't the girlfriend. I wasn't even the victim. I was the actor who didn't know she was on set. He looked satisfied, like a director who finally got the take he needed. The vibration rattled against the mahogany desk. I jumped. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. It was just my phone. A text from Theron. The preview was short. I'm staying at a hotel. Please don't contact me. I stared at the pixels. 14 words. 14 words that felt like a cage door swinging open. I didn't reply. I just held the phone. The metal casing was cold in my palm. The air in the office shifted. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was just empty. I stood up slowly. My knees popped audibly. I hadn't moved in hours. My muscles felt like rusted wire. I walked out of the office and into the living room. The sun was setting through the mini blends, casting long orange bars across the carpet. Dust motes danced in the light shafts that looked so normal. Just a Sunday evening in Atlanta. Just a quiet living room. The TV was dark. The magazines were stacked neatly on the coffee table. You know that feeling? When you think you survived the car crash? That sudden dizzying rush of oxygen? I sat on the beige sofa. The leather creaked under my weight. It felt grounding. Real. I placed the MacBook on the ottoman. The folder project, Sable, was still open. It glowed with a malignant blue light. I told myself I could fix this. That's the probation officer in me. Fix the problem. Contain the threat. He left. He was actually gone. The director had left the set. The show was canceled. I reached for the trackpad. My hand was steady now. The trembling had stopped. I highlighted the folder. It felt like holding a loaded gun. I dragged it to the trash. Project Sable, gone. Audio files, gone. I hovered over empty trash. I clicked it. The progress bar zipped across the screen. The files vanished into digital dust. I leaned my head back against the sofa cushion. I closed my eyes. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It sounded like a sob. The house was dead silent. No humming servers, no cameras clicking, no Theron breathing, just the low hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. I thought it was over. I really did. I thought, Sable, you're safe now. You can go to work tomorrow. You can explain this to Detective Kimura, but that is the danger of being gaslit for 3 years. Your brain becomes your own enemy. It wants peace so bad it ignores the war zone. I reached for my water glass on the side table. The condensation made my fingers wet. The condensation was freezing. I took a long sip. The water tasted like copper and fear, and then the screen lit up again in my hand. Not a text, not a call. A gray notification banner slid down from the top of the lock screen. Official. Cold, Fulton County Superior Court. Case filing notification. My stomach dropped. It hit the floor before my eyes even focused on the words. I tapped the banner. The glass screen felt slippery under my thumb. Petitioner Theron Villanueva. Respondent Sable Osei Menza. Filing type, temporary protective order. Status, fold. The timestamp was 4002 p.m., just minutes ago. While I was deleting files, he was filing charges. He wasn't giving me space. He was establishing the narrative while driving to a hotel. The record would show. He filed first. He called the police first. He was the victim. I looked around the living room. The silence wasn't peace. It was a vacuum waiting to implode. Police officers could be en route right now. They could walk through that front door in minutes. And here I was, sitting on the couch, deleting evidence like a fool. Have you ever realized you were fighting a ghost while the living man was burying you? Because that's what this felt like. Tell me in the comments, would you have deleted those files or kept them as proof? Because I made a choice I can't take back. I thought I had won. I thought the silence meant safety. But silence is just the space between the thunder and the lightning. I sat on the beige sofa staring at the gray notification banner on my lock screen. Status filed. My breath stopped in my chest. It wasn't a draft anymore. It was a legal fact. I looked around the living room. The silence felt heavy, like the air was being sucked out of the room. If you've ever had your rights stripped away by a single ping, you know this feeling. I needed to see the official docket. I needed to see exactly what lies he was telling them. I stood up slowly. My legs felt like they were made of lead weights. I walked into the home office down the hall. The door was swinging slightly on its hinges. The mahogany desk was a mess of cables and papers. It looked like a crime scene. I sat in the leather chair. The leather was cold against the back of my bare thighs. I opened the Fulton County Superior Court portal on the laptop. My hands were shaking so bad I missed the password keys twice. I typed in my last name, OSEIMENSAH. The page loaded slowly. Blue and white pixels resolving into sharp black text. There it was. Case number 2024 TPO 9T99T. Petitioner, Theron Villanueva. Respondent, Sable Ose Menza. Me. I was the defendant now. I scrolled down past the legalese. This is where it gets really messed up. Exhibit A was listed as audio recording, subject outburst, RC sec spinal.mp3. File size 4.2 megabytes. Duration 45 seconds. I knew exactly what that was. It was the file I'd just deleted from his hard drive. I deleted Project Sable. But he had already archived it to the court. He didn't need the local copy. He had already uploaded it to the cloud. I looked at the Orbi router in the corner. The green light was blinking steadily. It wasn't just for internet speed. It was a surveillance hub sending my data straight to him. That's why he upgraded it. Military-grade mesh network. I felt a wave of nausea roll through me. Acid burned the back of my throat. I clicked a link next to the exhibit. The browser window popped up. I heard my own voice screaming through the laptop speakers. I will kill you. I heard myself scream. It was loud. It was violent. But I remembered that night. I was yelling at a spider on the wall. I had a broom in my hand. I was terrified of bugs. He cut the audio right before the spider part. He just left the threat. I scrolled down to the sworn affidavit. This was the worst part. He claimed I threw a wine glass at his head. He said I lunged at him with a deadly weapon. That glass broke because I dropped it. I even have a scar on my foot to prove it. But in his report, I'm the attacker. He's the victim. The document cited Georgia Code OCGA 19 to 1392 1. Family violence. Stalking. Aggravated assault. My job requires me to uphold the law. And now I'm the respondent on a domestic violence order. Fulton County doesn't look kindly on probation officers with TPOs against them. Everyone at the courthouse would see this. The judges, the bailiffs, the DA. This is it. This is how he takes my badge. I checked the hearing date at the bottom of the screen. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I had 24 hours to prove I wasn't the monster he created. But he had the receipts. He had the edited audio. He had the witnesses. I scrolled further down. Marcus Webb was listed as a character witness for the petitioner, my ex-husband, the man who paid Theron to break me. I thought about the invoice paid folder. Marcus didn't just pay for a breakup, he paid for a conviction. They had planned this execution down to the minute. I looked at the screen again. The cursor blinked at me like a heartbeat. I thought about the police. If they came to the door right now, I would be arrested. On the word of a man who doesn't exist. On a file paid for by my ex. I put my head in my hands. The smell of lemon polish from the desk made me gag. It smelled like him. I have a question for you. How do you fight a lie when the system has already accepted it as the truth? I sat there frozen. The sun was going down outside the window. The room was getting dark. One click of a button, and 3 years of my life became a weapon against me. I sat up in the leather chair. My neck cracked. The room was dark now, except for the blue glow of the monitor. 4:45 p.m., the TPO was filed. I had 17 hours until the hearing at 9 a.m. tomorrow. 17 hours to prove I wasn't crazy. I reached into my pocket. My fingers brushed the plastic edge of the micro SD card, the only truth I had left. The lemon polish smell still lingered. It made my stomach turn. But I couldn't throw up. I couldn't sit here paralyzed. I opened the laptop. The light burned my eyes. I plugged the adapter into the side port. The files loaded. Raw audio. 45 minutes of our life. You ever heard your own voice on tape? It's humbling. But hearing it edited to make you sound like a monster, that's something else entirely. I opened Adobe Audition. My hands were shaking. I had to steady them against the mahogany desk. The timeline appeared. Blue blocks of audio. Rows of sound waves. The first file, Sable Aragir 01 Seshel Rajowav.wave. I hit play. Headphones on. The world narrowed to what I could hear. 47 minutes. Not the 2 minutes Theron had cut down for the court. I listened to the first 5 minutes. Nothing, just cooking sounds. The clink of silverware, the hum of the refrigerator, then mine at 6. Darren's voice comes through the speaker. Clear, clear, calm, too calm. Babe, you forgot to buy milk again. I hear my own voice back. Tired. I was at work until 7, Theron. Minute 8, Theron again. It's just milk, Sable. You're always forgetting things. Then the editing starts. I can see where Theron cut out the 10 minutes in between, where I explained I had a defendant threaten me in court, where I told him I was exhausted. The raw audio shows the context. The edited version shows a woman losing her mind over nothing. Objection. Overruled by silence. I skipped ahead to the fight from October 15th. The dinner party incident. The Exhibit A file. The one that made me sound violent. I lined up the tracks. Split screen. Theron's version on top. The raw file below. Top track, I'm gonna kill you, you bastard. Bottom track, same words. Same pitch, same rage. But before them, in the raw file, Theron's voice, low, taunting, whispering right into my ear. Come on, hit me. Do it, you're just like your mother, a coward. The record will show the provocation, but the court would only hear the response. I felt something shift in my chest. The despair turned hot. Sharp. I'd been gaslit for 3 years, but the raw data doesn't lie. I wonder what you would do in this moment. Would you keep listening, or would you stop and pretend you never heard it? I kept listening. For hours, the sun went down completely. The room was pitch black except for the screen. My back ached. My eyes burned. But I couldn't stop. I found the spider incident. The one he claimed was a death threat. Raw file, 32 minutes long. The edited version, 45 seconds. In the raw audio, I'm crying. There's a wolf spider the size of my hand on the wall. Theron, please just get it. I can't. Theron's voice. No, you deal with it. Stop being hysterical. I swear I'm going to scream if it comes near me. Cut. Splice. I'm going to scream if it comes near you. Theron had removed the spider. Removed his taunting, left only my fear, framed as a threat against his life. That doesn't hold water, and now I had proof. I worked through the night. Coffee cup after coffee cup. The empty creamer carton sat on my desk. A white ghost in the blue light. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the waveform on the screen. Those jagged spikes where I yelled. The flat lines where Theron baited me in silence. The timing was precise, surgical. This wasn't just a relationship. This was a production. If you've ever been in a manipulative relationship, you know exactly what I'm feeling. That moment when you realize your instincts were right all along. I found another clip, the wine bottle incident, Exhibit B, Theron's version, glass breaking. Me screaming, silence. Raw version, 30 minutes of him moving the wine bottle closer to the edge. Every time I walked by, he was creating the scene, blocking me, like a director. And then the raw audio of the bottle falling, his hand on it, pushing. Then my scream, genuine fear. Cut. Paste. Now I'm the violent one throwing glass at his head. The court would see Exhibit B. A broken bottle. A terrified man. They wouldn't see the man who spent 30 minutes staging a domestic crime scene. By 3 a.m., I had compiled 6 exhibits. 6 moments where Theron had edited out his own abuse. 6 moments that looked like me attacking him. Unprovoked. 6 lies I could dismantle with a single play button. The air conditioning kicked on. The vents rattled. I shivered. I was still wearing that Georgia Tech t-shirt. The same one I'd put on 3 days ago. My phone lit up on the desk. A notification. White text on a black screen. Detective Kimura got the logs. Router uploaded at 3:14 a.m. every night. You're clear to use the raw files. I exhaled. A breath I'd been holding for 12 hours. I had the raw audio. I had the router logs. I had the timeline. I had the smoking gun. But as I looked at the evidence piled on my screen, the gun was pointed at me. Because to use this evidence, I had to play it. I had to let the court hear us at our worst. I had to let them hear me scream at him. Even if I was provoked. Even if I was right. The truth is messy. The edited version is clean. And judges like clean. But I'm a probation officer. I know the system. I know what they want. They want a villain. And Theron had spent 3 years casting me for the role. I closed the laptop. The screen went black. My reflection stared back at me. Tired eyes. Messy hair. But not broken. I stood up. My knees popped. The leather chair was warm from where I'd been sitting all night. I walked to the window. The blinds were still down. I cracked one slat. The streetlights glowed orange in the mist. Dawn was still hours away. In 6 hours, I'd walk into that courtroom. I'd face Theron. I'd face Marcus. I'd play the raw audio, and I'd let the chips fall where they may, because the record will show the truth. Even if the verdict is silent, I closed the blinds tight. The mist was still heavy outside. I turned back to the mahogany desk. I had the raw files. I had the router logs from Kimura. I just needed to organize them for the clerk. I sat back down in the leather chair. The seat was still warm. The MacBook screen glowed in the dark office. I opened a new folder to drag the evidence into. That's when I saw it. It was the folder sitting right next to Project Sable. I hadn't noticed it before. The name was simple, Portfolio. I hesitated. The cursor hovered over the icon. I told myself I had enough. I had the smoking gun, but something pulled at me. You know that feeling? Like checking your phone even though you know it's bad news. I double-clicked it. A PDF launched on the screen. The title page was slick. Villanueva Legal Consulting, the Preemptive Strike Strategy. It wasn't a diary. It was a sales pitch, a marketing deck. I scrolled to the third slide. It listed target profiles. High net worth individuals, police officers, judges. Then I saw it. Probation officers. The air left the room. I actually gasped. It was loud in the quiet office. Slide 4 had a bullet point in bold red text. Targeting authority figures for maximum leverage. I stared at the words. The letters started to blur. My hand gripped the edge of the desk. The wood dug into my palm. It wasn't about my temper. It was about my job, my badge, my credibility. He wasn't trying to prove I was abusive. He was trying to prove that the system was broken. If a trained probation officer can be framed, anyone can. That was the product he was selling. We can destroy anyone. I kept scrolling. I needed to see the receipts. There was a section titled Successful Interventions. Case studies. Women he had broken. Names, dates, outcomes. Most were redacted, but one name wasn't. On J. Mercer. Judge Mercer. My stomach turned over. He was a client. The text under his name read, Strategy executed, public discrediting of spouse achieved. I felt cold. Not the chill of the air conditioning, a deep bone cold. I thought this was a breakup, a nasty, toxic divorce, but it was a business transaction. And I was the product. I looked at my reflection in the black monitor window. My hair was a mess. My eyes were wide. I looked crazy. He made me look exactly how he needed me to look. Have you ever realized your pain was just a marketing strategy? Do you know how much your integrity is worth on the open market? He was going to use my case to get more clients. More men wanting to crush their wives. I stood up. The chair squeaked against the floor. I grabbed the laptop. I grabbed the micro SD card. I was shaking so hard I almost dropped the keys. I wasn't a girlfriend. I was a trophy. The probation officer framed for abuse. That was worth a fortune to his clients. The knock wasn't loud, but it shattered the silence in the hallway like a gunshot. I froze. My hand was clutching the laptop so hard my knuckles were white. It was 6:14 a.m. I know because the cable box was glowing in the dark living room. Who knocks at 6:14 a.m.? Not a neighbor, not a delivery driver. It was the rhythm of the law. 3 sharp raps. Controlled. Inevitable. You know that feeling when the floor drops out from under you? That's how I felt standing there in my gray Georgia Tech sweatpants. I knew exactly who it was, or at least what they represented. I set the laptop down on the entryway table. I couldn't let them see it. I smoothed my hair. I tried to look like a senior probation officer, not a terrified woman holding a bag of digital evidence. I walked to the door. The Ring doorbell screen was lit up in blue. The motion sensor had triggered the camera feed. 2 men in Atlanta PD uniforms stood on the porch. Their faces were illuminated by the harsh porch light. They weren't looking at the house. They were looking at their boots, waiting. I pressed the intercom button. My heart was hammering in my throat. Who is it? My voice sounded steady. Thank God for muscle memory. Atlanta police, ma'am? We have a warrant. The sound of the word warrant hung in the air like smoke. I unlocked the deadbolt. The metal click echoed in the quiet foyer. I pulled the door open. The humid Georgia air rushed in. It smelled like wet asphalt and impending doom. The officer on the left stepped forward. He had a clipboard. Sable Osei Mensa? He asked. He already knew the answer. That's me, I said. I crossed my arms over my chest. We're here regarding the temporary protective order filed by Mr. Villanueva. Theron. Even his name felt like a slap in the face. The order was signed by Judge Mercer, he added. My stomach churned. Of course it was Mercer. Pair OCGA 19 Nash and 13-1. We're here to seize all firearms. He held up the paper. I didn't need to read it. I knew the statute. I had enforced it 100 times. And your service weapon, ma'am, he added softly. He didn't want to do this. I could see it in his eyes. But he had a job to do. Just like I did. Or like I used to do. One moment, I said. I turned and walked back to the bedroom. My legs felt like they were made of lead. The floorboards creaked under my bare feet. I felt like a criminal in my own home. I opened the biometric lockbox on the nightstand. The lid hissed open. There it was. My Sig Sauer P320, Fulton County Sheriff's Office issued. I stared at it. It was just a tool, a piece of steel. But right now, it was my lifeline. I picked it up. The grip was worn smooth from 3 years of range practice. I ejected the magazine. One round in the chamber. The brass casing clattered onto the nightstand. It sounded like a gavel striking a sound block. Case closed. Justice served. I cleared the weapon. I laid the slide back. I walked back to the front door. The officers were still standing on the porch. They were silhouettes against the rising sun. I stepped outside. The porch was cold. I held the gun out, barrel down, grip facing the officer. Is it loaded? He asked. No, sir, I said. He took it. His gloved fingers brushed mine. He placed it into a plastic evidence bag. It was over in a second. And your badge, ma'am? The second officer said. I felt the blood drain from my face. The order specifies all law enforcement identification. My hand went to my hip. My gold shield was clipped to my belt loop. I unclipped it. It was heavy. I looked at my name etched in the gold. Senior Probation Officer, Fulton County. I held it out. He took it. He dropped it into his Ziploc bag. Just like that. I was unarmed. I was uncredentialed. I was just Sable again. The victim. The officer handed me a receipt. You have 24 hours to contest the seizure, he said. I nodded. I couldn't speak. They turned and walked down the driveway. I watched them get into the patrol car. The blue lights flickered once. Then they were gone. The street was silent again. But the house felt empty. I leaned against the doorframe. I realized I was shaking. They took my badge. They took my gun. Theron had already taken my dignity. The cruiser turned the corner. The silence rushed back in. It was louder than the sirens. I stood on the porch alone. The concrete was cold under my bare feet. My badge was gone. My gun was gone. They took them like I was a common criminal. I turned the knob. The deadbolt clicked. Inside, the house smelled like stale coffee and old fear. I walked to the entryway table. The laptop was sitting there, Theron's MacBook. It looked innocent, just a piece of aluminum and glass. But it held the truth. I picked it up. The metal was cold against my palms. It felt heavy, heavier than it should be. I carried it to the home office. The room was pitch black. I didn't turn on the lamp. I sat in the leather chair. The leather creaked under my weight. My hands were shaking. I needed someone who knew the law. Someone who knew the system. You ever feel like you're screaming underwater? That was my life for 3 years. I scrolled through my contacts. The screen was too bright in the dark. It hurt my eyes. I found the name. Det Zara Kimura. We worked a fraud case together in 2019. She was sharp. She didn't miss a thing. I pressed call. It rang once. Twice. Kimura, a voice answered. She sounded awake. Alert. Zara, it's Sable. Osei Mensa. I paused. My throat felt tight. Like a wire was pulled tight around it. Sable, you okay? I heard the dispatch go out. TPO enforcement at your address. She knew. The system already knew. I'm here, but I need you to listen to something. I pulled the micro SD card from my pocket. It was small, tiny, but it was a nuke. I plugged it into the adapter, then into the laptop side port. I'm sending you a file, the raw audio, the stuff Theron didn't edit. Okay, sending. Got it. What am I listening for? I took a deep breath. My ribs hurt. Just listen to track 4, Sable RHA01, raw. I hit play. My voice filled the small room. I sounded angry. Yes, I was yelling. But then you hear him. Just listen to the gaps, Thera. On the recording, Theron spoke. He was calm. Cool. Calculated. You're hysterical, Sable. You're losing it. Then a cut. A digital skip. A dead space of silence. Then my voice again. I can't do this anymore. It sounded like a threat in the raw file. It was a plea. He had cut out his own provocation. Sable, Zara said. Her voice changed. It dropped an octave. This is spliced badly. Keep listening, I said. I felt tears stinging my eyes. Hot tears. Track 5, the spider incident. Theron told the judge I threatened him with a knife. The raw file told a different story. I was screaming about a wolf spider on the wall. He cut the word spider out, Zara whispered. He replaced it with silence. So get the spider sounds like get her. Exactly. I leaned back, the chair groaned. He's not just gaslighting me, Zara. He's manufacturing evidence. This is evidence tampering, she said. This is felony obstruction. This isn't a domestic dispute, Sable. This is a frame-up. I closed my eyes. The relief hit me like a physical wave. Dizziness. For 3 years, I was the crazy one, the angry one, the problem. Now, I was the victim. I checked the time. 6:45 a.m. I'm on my way to the courthouse, I said. Hearing is at 9. Don't go alone, Zara said. I'm meeting you there. And bring that laptop. We're going to bury him with his own files. I looked at the screen. The audio files were staring back at me. They were weapons. But now I held the gun. Thank you, I whispered. Save it for the judge, she said. The wine went dead. I sat there in the dark. The fear was still there. It was heavy. But it was different now. I wasn't alone. The record was going to show the truth. For the first time in 3 years, the recording wasn't going to be used against me. I walked into courtroom 4B at 8:58 a.m. I was wearing gray sweatpants and my Georgia Tech t-shirt. I looked crazy. That was the point. Theron wanted the world to see a mess. So I gave him a mess. The room smelled like old paper and floor wax. It was freezing. The air conditioning hummed loud. Theron sat at the plaintiff's table. He wore a navy suit. His hands were folded perfectly. He looked like a concerned citizen. A saint? Judge Mercer sat on the bench. I recognized him immediately. He was in the portfolio, a paid client. He looked down at me over his reading glasses. He didn't look friendly. You know that feeling when everyone is looking at you like you're a bomb about to go off? I stood there. I didn't sit down. Theron stood up. He held a USB drive like it was evidence. Your Honor, he said. His voice was soft. I am afraid for my life. He plugged the drive into the clerk's console. The screen flashed. Exhibit A, he said. He played the clip. The speakers crackled. My voice filled the room. I'm going to kill you. It sounded terrifying. Short, sharp, deadly, no context. Just rage. The bailiff shifted his weight. His hand moved closer to his belt. Theron put a hand over his heart. He looked at the floor. It was an Oscar-worthy performance. Judge Mercer looked at me. He didn't look surprised. He looked bored. He was ready to sign the order, to send me away. I felt my hands go cold. I looked at Zara. She sat next to me. She was calm like still water. She reached into her jacket pocket. She pulled out the micro SD card. It was small and silver. Objection, Zara said. Her voice cut through the air. The defense has Exhibit A, the raw source files. Mercer sighed. He waved a hand. Make it quick. I stood up. My legs felt like lead. I walked to the clerk. I handed her the card. She slotted it into the machine. The screen lit up. I selected the file. Sable Rage01 raw.waveev. The timestamp was 47 minutes, not 45 seconds. I hit play. Theron's voice came through the speakers first. Come on, Sable, don't be a hysterical bitch. It was clear as day. Then the sound of a chair scraping. There is a spider, my voice said. It was shaking. It is right there. Theron laughed on the recording. Oh, you're so dramatic. Scream for me, baby. The edited version had sliced that right out. The raw version held the truth. You could hear the manipulation. You could hear the cruelty. The recording continued. Stop moving the milk, Theron's voice taunted. You can't even do simple things without freaking out. My recorded voice snapped back. I didn't touch the damn milk. It was domestic. It was stupid, but it wasn't a death threat. The room went dead silent. The air conditioning seemed to stop humming. The clerk stopped typing. Everyone was looking at Theron. He stopped looking at the floor. He looked at the speaker. Then he looked at me. His face went white. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. Have you ever heard a room stop breathing? That was this room. Judge Mercer leaned forward. He pushed his glasses up his nose. He was listening. He was hearing the con. And he knew he was compromised. If he ruled for Theron now, he was part of the conspiracy. If he ruled for me, he exposed his own client. I looked right at Theron. I didn't blink. That man is a producer, Your Honor, I said, and I was his unwilling star. The raw file kept playing. Theron's voice, cold and mocking. You're gonna lose your job. Nobody will believe you. It went on, a soundtrack of abuse. The mood in the room flipped. The pity shifted from him to me. It was a physical thing. A weight lifting off my shoulders. Theron tugged at his collar. The confident victim was gone. The director was losing control of the set. I watched his eyes. They were darting around the room, looking for an exit, looking for a lie that would stick. But there were no lines left for him to read. You could see the exact moment his script ran out of pages. The gavel hit the wood, one sharp crack. That sound echoed through courtroom 4B like a gunshot. The TPO was denied, objection overruled by reality. I watched Theron pack his bag. Slowly. Deliberately, he didn't look at me. He just looked at his watch. He knew the gig was up. That was 2 hours ago. Now, I was standing in the middle of my living room. The silence here was heavier than the judge's robes. It pressed against my ears. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over the Zillow app. I typed in my address. Enter. There it was. My home. On a screen. For sale, $14.50 square feet. Price reduced. The red banner looked like a warning sign. The listing photo showed the porch where I drank coffee every morning. The description read, charming bungalow. Ready for a fresh start. Ready for a fresh start. That phrase made my stomach turn. The house wasn't charming. It was a set. You know what's ironic? I won. The evidence was clear. The judge had no choice but to deny the order. Theron is facing real charges now. Wiretapping, fraud, harassment. But tell me in the comments, have you ever won a battle but still felt like you lost the war? Because that is exactly how this feels right now. I walked to the window. The mini blinds were bent, letting in slivers of dusty light. I remembered moving in 3 years ago. It was raining. We carried boxes together. He was laughing. He held a potted plant like it was a trophy. I remember thinking, this is it. This is safe. I was so wrong. The danger wasn't outside. It was holding the plant. The room felt empty now. Even the furniture looked like props. The beige sofa where he staged his injuries. The rug where he fell for the camera. I wanted to burn it all. The virtual tour started playing on my screen. I watched the camera pan over the kitchen. I could see the knife block on the counter. Exhibit B. Right there on the screen, the agent notes said, motivated seller. Motivated to get rid of the evidence, maybe. I looked back at the Zestimate. It was low, way lower than what I paid. Theron listed it yesterday, before the hearing even started. He knew he couldn't keep me. So he decided to cash out. The house is just an asset to liquidate, like the rest of my life. I walked down the hall. The floorboards creaked. In the bedroom, the closet was gaping open. His side was bare. Just empty hangers swaying in the draft. The smell of his cologne was finally gone. But the lemon polish lingered. It smelled like a hospital. Sterile. Cold. Dead. My lawyer says I should stay. Don't let him drive you out, she said. She doesn't understand. She hasn't heard the recordings. She hasn't heard herself sleeping. I'm leaving tomorrow. I can't sleep here. Every shadow looks like a lens. Every hum from the fridge sounds like a hard drive spinning. I sat on the floor. The hardwood was cold against my legs. I held the micro SD card in my hand. It was warm from my palm. This tiny piece of plastic cost me everything. If you've ever had to leave a home you loved because of a person you trusted, you know this pain. It's not just walls, it's memories. Ruined. I have a suitcase in the hall. Just one. Clothes, toiletries, the essentials. The rest stays. Let 'em have it. Let the new owners deal with the ghosts in the Wi-Fi. I stood up, my knees popped. I looked around one last time. The record will show that Sable Simonso was vindicated. The record will show Theron Villanueva is a fraud. But the record doesn't show the nightmares. It doesn't show the way I jump when a phone buzzes. I want to know what you would have done. Tell me in the comments. Should I have burned it down? Or is walking away the only win left? I won the case, but he got the house. He got my peace of mind for 3 years. I was sitting in a corner booth at a coffee shop near the courthouse. The air conditioning was blasting. I was freezing, but I couldn't stop shaking. My latte sat on the table, untouched. The foam had collapsed into a brown ring. People were laughing at a table nearby. They looked so young, so unaware. I checked the time on my phone, 11:30 a.m. I felt like I had aged 10 years in 3 hours. Then the phone buzzed. It vibrated loud against the wooden table. I jumped. I always jump now. The screen read, Detective Kimura. I slid my finger across the glass to answer. Her voice sounded tired. Tired, but happy. We got him, Sable. We found the server. I held my breath. It wasn't just a cloud backup, she said. It was a physical site, a warehouse in Duluth. She paused for effect. The feds are there now. Racketeering charges are incoming. I leaned back against the hard vinyl seat. Racketeering. That word is heavy. It means he's going away for a long time. If convicted, there is no probation. Just a cell. The portfolio was the smoking gun, Zara continued. You didn't just find a brochure. You found a roadmap to a criminal enterprise. I looked at the empty chair across from me. That chair used to hold him. Now it held the ghost of his manipulation. Check the news, Zara said. It just hit the wire. AJC, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I hung up and opened the browser app. My thumb hovered over the screen. I was scared to see his face. But I had to. I tapped the link. The page loaded slowly on the courthouse Wi-Fi. And there it was. The headline, Atlanta man arrested in frame-up scheme. Below the text was a photo. His booking photo. The mugshot, it was black and white. The lighting was harsh. It showed every flaw in his skin. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't the charming director anymore. He looked small. He looked like a scared little boy in a jumpsuit. You know that feeling when you finally see the monster and realize it's just a man? That was this moment. I zoomed in on his eyes. They were dead. No manipulation. No calculation. Just fear. I felt a lump form in my throat. I thought I would scream. I thought I would cry. But I didn't. I just took a sip of my cold, bitter coffee. It tasted like justice. Bitter but necessary. The article listed the charges. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Wiretapping. Racketeering. They mentioned Judge Mercer, too. He was named as a co-conspirator. The whole house of cards was collapsing. The record will show that he built it. And I pulled the pin. It wasn't just a breakup anymore. It was a federal case. My relationship was evidence. My tears were exhibits. My life was now part of the public record. I watched the people laughing at the next table again. They didn't know. They had no idea that a predator had been living down the street. Theron is gone. The set is dismantled. The cameras are down. But as I sat there looking at that mugshot, I felt something else. Relief? Maybe. But also exhaustion. Deep, bone-weary exhaustion. I won the war. I kept my job. I kept my freedom. But I lost 3 years. And I lost the ability to trust my own gut. That takes a long time to heal. I want you to ask yourself something. If you found out your whole relationship was a job, could you ever trust anyone again? The system finally worked, but it took me almost destroying myself to make it work. It's quiet here. I am sitting on a cardboard box in the middle of my living room. The windows are open. A warm breeze is coming in from the street. I can hear the cars driving by. Real traffic. Not the simulated hum of the server rack. Not the silence of a soundproof booth. Just life. Messy, loud, unpredictable life. I look around. This place is small, a one-bedroom apartment over on the east side of Atlanta. The walls are painted a stark, clinical white. White like a blank page. Or maybe like a surrender flag. I don't have much furniture yet. Just this folding chair and a cheap floor lamp. The light bulb is yellow. It casts long shadows against the bare drywall. There's a television in the corner. It's an old one. A heavy CRT tube TV I found at a thrift store yesterday. I paid $40 cash for it. I plugged it in an hour ago. I reached out and pressed the power button. Look at that, just static. Gray snow dancing violently across the curved glass. There's no Wi-Fi antenna on the back. No smart features listening to my heartbeat. No cameras hidden in the black screen watching me sleep. It is perfect. You know that sound. That hiss of white noise. I used to hate silence. I thought it meant something was wrong. I thought it meant the silence was loading. But now? It sounds like safety. It sounds like the truth. I want to know if you have ever felt that. That moment when the noise finally stops screaming at you. When the background track just cuts out. I take a deep breath. My chest expands. For 3 years, I held my breath around him. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Or for the microphone to turn on. The air in here smells like dust and lemon floor wax. It doesn't smell like his cologne. It doesn't smell like the stale coffee he used to brew. I picked up the newspaper this morning. There was his mugshot on the front page. He looked tired. His eyes were hollow. Good. I hope the concrete is cold in his cell. Theron Villanueva. The system he tried to game finally ate him alive. Objection overruled. The record will show that he lost. I drove past the old house yesterday. There's a for sale sign on the lawn. The grass was overgrown. I didn't stop the car. I just kept driving. I still have the micro SD card. It's sitting in a safe deposit box downtown now, not as evidence for a trial, but as a reminder. A reminder that I survived the director's cut. The judge is gone too. Mercer, disbarred and facing his own indictment. Justice is slow, but it has a heavy hand. I walked into the kitchen earlier. It is small. The counters are linoleum. I stood there and waited. I waited for the green light on a Nest Hub to blink. I waited for the click of a smoke detector. Nothing happened. The room was still. It was just a room. Not a set. Not a stage. Just a kitchen. If you are watching this and you feel stuck, if you feel like someone is editing your reality, don't let them write your script. Grab the pen. Or, in my case, grab the camera. I'm going to stay here for a while, watch the static, drink my coffee. Hot coffee this time. I have more stories to tell you. Stories about the system. Stories about survival. If you want to hear them, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Drop a like if the story hit you. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done? I read every single one. I'm recording this now. But this time, I'm holding the mic, and nobody edits me but me.